Hello and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, hi, you're very welcome. This is Reading the Past and I'm Dr. Cat. And I'm aware that I sound a little bit husky, a little bit throaty in today's video. I'm not ill and I haven't been ill, but I have been doing far too much public speaking in the cold weather and I haven't been taking good enough care of my voice. I know better than that, but sometimes we don't follow our own advice, do we? I probably should be on vocal rest right now, but here I am making a YouTube video, which is perhaps counterintuitive, but we'll carry on. It's December. It's almost 2020. I don't know where 2019 has gone. It's frankly terrifying how fast this year has gone by. It's been a little while since I made a video reacting to the news. And in November, there were 3 news items that really caught my attention and piqued my interest. So I thought we could look at them together today and think about what they might mean in context and also, therefore, their significance for our understanding of history. Let's look at them. I've decided to talk about these 3 news items in the same order that I first became aware of them, that they first piqued my interest and caught my attention, if you will. And I think that also happens to be the exact same order that they first broke as news items, but on that point I'm not 100% sure. So with that in mind, the first piece of news that I want to look at is this one. So in this case, I've gone to The Guardian to look at this news story. Now, of course, other newspapers and also other sources will be available for this story. This just happens to be the one that I've chosen. The title of the article reads, AI reveals Shakespeare and Fletcher's different roles in Henry VIII. So it's talking about Henry VIII or All is True, one of Shakespeare and Fletcher's co-authored plays. It's also a play that I made a video on that I will leave linked in a card. In that video, I talk about Fletcher and Shakespeare as the co-authors of the play. So this AI software has not given us any brand new information. We had long suspected that this play was written by these 2 men. Indeed, the article begins with that very fact and mentions James Spedding, who in 1850, while working on Henry VIII, attributed it to both Shakespeare and John Fletcher. So this is old news, isn't it? In fact, as the article rightly points out, this news is 169 years old. We have known for some time that Shakespeare and Fletcher co-authored this play. So why do I find this piece of news interesting? Why does it matter as far as I'm concerned? Well, it's the methodology that is particularly fascinating to me, and that is brilliantly laid out in the second paragraph of this article. We are told that Peter Plachak, and if I have pronounced his name wrong, I sincerely apologise, who is based at the Czech Academy of Sciences in Prague, used an algorithm to do this work. So we have cutting-edge technology being used to do this historical analysis, which I think is really fascinating. To train his algorithm, he used, first of all, Shakespeare's later plays, Coriolanus, Cymbeline, The Winter's Tale and The Tempest. And he also used some of Fletcher's plays, Valentinian, Monsieur Thomas, The Woman's Prize and Bonduca. And to ensure that he had a great control text, he looked at work by Philip Massinger, another possible candidate for Henry VIII. So what he has done is he has trained this algorithm using the plays from the same period as Henry VIII was being written by 3 authors who have been suspected of having some part in its creation. Once he has trained the algorithm using these texts, he can then turn it on the play of Henry VIII, which he does. Ultimately, and most simplistically, what this algorithm has achieved is it has confirmed what James Spedding said in 1850. And of course, since 1850, there have been lots of people who have contested his attribution of Henry VIII to William Shakespeare and John Fletcher. Many, for example, have attempted to include Massinger as a potential author. Through the algorithm, Fletcher and Shakespeare are confirmed and Massinger is ruled out. However, what the algorithm's analysis has offered, which Spedding's couldn't, is it's been able to read each part of the text and attribute it to a particular author's style. Spedding makes a really good guess about lots of pieces of this play, but the algorithm, in terms of the individual bits of text and their attribution, makes some qualifications, some corrections to Spedding's analysis. So why do I find this news item so interesting? Ultimately, it's told me what I already knew, with maybe some slight alterations on who wrote which bits of the play, perhaps not that groundbreaking. Well, I disagree, because I think that this particular algorithm offers amazing potential. What I see in this news item, what interests me about it, is the potential uses of this particular piece of technology. Is it possible that we could input into this algorithm the work of multiple authors? Perhaps an entire corpus, maybe a digital library's worth of authorial work, things that have been attributed to people. Having done that, could we then turn the algorithm on texts that are anonymous? If we can do this work by author and by date, could we then also run other texts through it? Could we find the names of the people who wrote things that are currently listed as author unknown or anonymous? Perhaps. Of course, that would be reliant on the fact that the author of anonymous manuscripts had written other things to which their name had been put. But if that's the case, to me, that could be really interesting, because well-known authors' bodies of work could therefore be expanded. We can learn more about them through doing this, I believe. Next up is this article from the Art newspaper. And as we see from the headline, we've got a question. Is this a previously unknown portrait of Queen Elizabeth I? So the story goes, an as yet unnamed private collector intended to sell a portrait of an unknown woman. They sent it to the auction house, Bonhams. While there, the painting was cleaned. One of the restorers or curators of works noticed that this painting had been overpainted. Underneath this overpainting, they found this portrait, which looks to them and to me distinctively like Elizabeth I. And as this article makes clear, that is certainly what the Yale Centre for British Art think is going on. They assert that this is an early portrait of Elizabeth I, painted in around 1562, 4 years after she came from the throne. It's going to be sold by Bonhams in its Old Master painting sale in London, which is taking place on the 4th of December. So after I'm filming this video, but before it's going to upload. So alas, if you did happen to have the spare cash, in this case £150,000 to £250,000 lying around, you will be too late for the auction if this is the first you're hearing of it. So what's interesting about this portrait? Why is this a discovery that piqued my attention? Well, as I said, they claim that this is painted in around 1562, 4 years after Queen Elizabeth comes to the English throne. This makes it one of the earliest known paintings of Elizabeth as Queen. Indeed, as the article says, and this portrait is among the very first we know that projects a new, approved image of the Queen. And that's what makes it fascinating. Queen Elizabeth and her courtiers controlled her image in almost unthinkable ways, particularly today. Every painting was approved. If any unapproved portraits of Elizabeth did make their way to market and were discovered, then the manufacturer, seller, even the owner could find themselves in line for some quite steep punishment. Elizabeth managed her image in ways that I think modern-day celebrities could only dream of. There was no paparazzi who were running around without any controls on them at this time. Elizabeth was intent that she would be presented to her public and the world in ways that she saw fit and in ways that she controlled. What we see in this portrait, if it is indeed of Elizabeth in 1562, is a young woman at the start of her queenship. Is this, perhaps, as some have suggested, a young woman who is still flirting with the idea of marriage? Is this portrait designed as essentially an advert, showing the Queen as she wished to be seen by potential suitors? Or is she simply setting out her stall? After her sister Mary, she is a young woman. She is the new Queen, and her youth and vivacity and liveliness is being put on display for all to see. I wonder what you think is going on with this portrait. Do let me know in the comment section down below. Last but by no means least of the 3 pieces of news, I have this one, here being represented on the Smithsonian magazine online. The title, Elizabeth I's idiosyncratic handwriting identifies her as the scribe behind a long overlooked translation. Once again, we have a piece of news that adds to an existing understanding of Elizabeth. We know Elizabeth I to be a keen and avid translator. Indeed, the first paragraph of this article points it out beautifully. At age 11, she translated a complicated French text called The Mirror, sometimes The Glass, of the Sinful Soul, as a New Year's present for her stepmother, Catherine Parr. Many academics, David Starkey included, have been particularly impressed with the quality of this translation. As you can see here, it's written in an incredibly fine hand. As Starkey points out, there's not a mark, not a blot, not a correction. At age 11, Elizabeth is not only translating fluently, but she is writing fluently. However, that same clean, clear handwriting does not seem to be what's on display in this later translation. From Tacitus Annales, which is a history of the Roman Empire from Tiberius to Nero, the handwriting itself is made by a scribe. That is clean and clear. It is the corrections that are attributed to Elizabeth I, and these are the ones that are called idiosyncratic. This attribution of these corrections to Elizabeth I has been made by John Mark Philo, who's a literary scholar at the University of East Anglia. What we see in these corrections is not the same handwriting as is displayed by the 11-year-old Elizabeth in that New Year's gift to her stepmother Catherine Parr. A distinct and clear alteration in her handwriting quality has clearly taken place, and that is explained further down in the article in this way, quote, "Per a press release, Elizabeth's penmanship deteriorated over time, with the speed and sloppiness of her writing rising in direct correlation with the Crown's increasing demands of governance. The Queen's M and N, for instance, essentially become horizontal lines, while her E and D broke down into disjointed strokes. The higher you are in the social hierarchy of Tudor England, the messier you can let your handwriting become," says Philo in a University of East Anglia statement. For the Queen, comprehension is somebody else's problem. Elizabeth's handwriting was so difficult to read, Philo adds, that letters sent in her later years were often accompanied by a note from an aide stating the 16th century equivalent of, "Sorry, please find a legible copy here." This discovery is fascinating to me because for scholars it closes out a centuries-long hunt. Academics have long been aware that Elizabeth is said to have made a translation of the Annals by Tacitus. That translation has, up until this point perhaps, been lost. Here we see Elizabeth's translation at work. A scribe may have done the handwriting, but if Philo is correct, these corrections by Elizabeth shows that she is still working on it. We have, at last, that work translated by her. The article explains, quote, "The newly identified text marks the first substantial work attributed to the Tudor Queen to emerge in more than a century." Further, quote, "The passage selected for translation offers an additional hint of the scholar's identity. A scene involving a general's wife, Agrippina, calming her husband's troops, bears striking parallels to Elizabeth's address at Tilbury, before troops preparing to stave off the Spanish Armada. I know I have the body of a weak and feeble woman, but I have the heart and stomach of a king, and of a king of England too," the Queen famously told the soldiers in July 1588. I agree with Philo's statement. It is hard not to wonder what Elizabeth made of Agrippina, who, as Elizabeth translates it, being a woman of great courage, took upon her some days the office of a captain, and is able to rouse the troops successfully. It is not unreasonable to assume that Agrippina may have appealed to the same queen who addressed the soldiers at Tilbury, and who had deliberately represented herself as placing the importance of addressing her troops in person above her personal safety. Through this discovery, we see Elizabeth still engaging in the translation of her childhood. We have proof that she is still interested in this work. Perhaps she finds it peaceful. David Starkey has suggested that it was almost like a modern-day person doing a Sudoku, that Elizabeth's translation were a way of calming her mind and retaining her focus, of testing her brain in the way that we might do a crossword. But also in the choice of translation. Perhaps we, as modern people, can look back a little bit into Elizabeth's mind and heart to see what was concerning her and what she was focused on, how she was shaping her queenship at this particularly dangerous time in her reign. So what do you think of these news articles? Had you seen them before I made this video? If you did, then what did you think of them when you first read them? If you didn't see them before, what do you think of them having watched this video? Let me know in the comment section down below. or come and find me over on my social media. I'll leave links to my Instagram and Twitter in the description box so you can follow me there and we can continue the conversation. I will also be leaving links to the articles that I've shown on screen in this video in the description box as well. I do hope you've enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you did, then let me know by hitting the thumbs up button. Please also subscribe to this channel, and while you're there, click the little bell icon next to the subscribe button so that YouTube will tell you when I've next uploaded. I hope you're going to have a great day, whatever you're doing, and I look forward to speaking to you all in my next video. Right now, I'm going to go and rest my voice, and I hope you will all take care of yourselves as well. Bye-bye for now.